Joining me today is Shweta, co-founder of eWow and executive coach. We're very excited to have her here with us today. And Rich Vass, vice president of learning solutions at ELB Learning. As always, Rich, good to see you. And without further ado, I will turn it over to y'all. Rich and Shweta, take it away.
Fabulous. Thank you, Jake. Always a pleasure to be on the main stage for our Tuesday or Thursday webinars. Our marketing team's been doing a great job of a steady cadence of adding value to the universe. Shweta, can you see my screen okay?
I can see your screen wonderfully well. Thank you,
Okay,
Rich.
excellent. Let's introduce our main guest today. Shweta Moga, influencer, evangelist, leadership coach, 20 years of experience, strong background in many, many areas. We're going to talk today about upskilling and reskilling. We've had a relationship now with Shweta for a few months, maybe on into last year. You did a webinar with us not long ago, I think.
Well, I've been part of many conversations with the marketing team and excited to be here to be in front of the live audience today.
Fantastic. Would you tell us more about yourself? I know you're in the Bay Area. You've been living in California for a while, but maybe tell us more about what you're involved with and who you are.
Absolutely. Thank you, Rich. I'm co-founder for a company called Empowered Women of the World Initiative, which is eWow. What we focus essentially is on coaching and mentoring women leaders. And our entire motto is to help women leaders discover, visualize, and actualize success, whatever it means to them. And that's what we do through our coaching sessions, through our podcasts, and through our virtual summits. Our podcast today are listened in 50 plus countries, so I'm excited to be here. As a professional, I'm a certified coach from International Coaching Federation, so do a lot of exec coaching. And background is in HR and talent acquisition. So I've worked for companies like Amazon, Facebook, and Airtel in India to lead their global HR portfolios. Excited to be here. Thank you, Rich.
Excellent. Thank you so much. I remember a few weeks ago, and maybe it was months now, I've lost all track of time, the older I get, but I think there was an International Women's Day, Women in Business Day, maybe recently, and I think we hosted a webinar with you and maybe one of your other co-founders.
Yes, it was Rashim, who's the founder for eWow. I think she was part of that. Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, we're really grateful to be partnered with you and to have you here with this very important topic today. So we'll dive into some of these concepts here around upskilling and reskilling. We're talking about what we mean by this and how we now, as learning professionals, who are mostly the folks on the call here today, we got lots of people from all over. I was looking at the chat briefly, who are now dealing with this real world of upskilling and reskilling, looking at our existing workforce, folks who are with us already. We're not talking about bringing new people on board, although that, certainly they become part of the upskilling and reskilling, but we're going to get into all of that here. But just quickly about ELB, we've been around a long time, as many of you know, going on 14 years now, and some of the stats around what we're doing and how we're growing. I look at these 5,000 learning experiences created. So we do a lot with our custom clients. Much of that learning is upskilling and reskilling for internal people. We have done some onboarding, some existing training, new processes, new procedures, things like that. But so much of our efforts for all of these different pieces that you see here have been focused on this very topic. So I wonder if we could go the route of showing you examples of learning we've done in that space, but Shweta brought us the McKinsey report, which was recently released on this topic, and that's what we're going to spend most of the time talking about today. So we'll get into some of that, but that's this piece here. Can you tell us more about this and why this caught your eye, Shweta? Do you do work with McKinsey, or I guess you're already in this space of consulting?
I'm in the space of consulting, and a lot of startups and organizations reach out to me in terms of how do they look at their talent, differently today with the changing economic scenario, or because of pandemic, or because of, just the hyper competition which exists today. This article specifically caught my eye because it did talk about how organizations, business strategy is evolving today, and what do they need to do in order to ensure that their employee base is actually competent to be able to manage the future changes that are coming their way. So definitely redeploying, upskilling, and reskilling are three core strategies that most organizations today look at when they start looking at their talent for future.
Mm-hmm. So let's talk about this. We've all seen this in the news lately. I just went out and grabbed, different screenshots off the web, from McDonald's to Meta to Amazon and Lyft and Whole Foods, which is an Amazon company, Ernst & Young. I mean, these are just a few examples. We've all seen it. We've probably all been impacted by it or affected by it. Shweta, these are existing people inside of these companies. So when I see Amazon's laying off 9,000 workers, Deloitte's laying off 1,200 people, what sort of load within the context of upskilling and reskilling does this put upon the employees who are left behind, the ones who survived the layoffs? Can you talk about that a little bit?
Absolutely. Whenever there is a role which gets eliminated or gets revisited in terms of the scope of work within an organization, the existing employees who are left behind, as you said, Rich, have a better opportunity to be able to contribute to the organization strategy. But having said that, it's not very easy emotionally, mentally for employees to be able to pivot into a very different direction altogether. And that's where the HR teams and business leaders come in together to say, what are the skills that I need for tomorrow? And what is it that my current employee base brings onto the table? What can I do to be able to bridge the gap from where they are currently to where they need to be moving? Or if my business strategy has completely changed, then it's not about reskilling. Then I need to infuse and help my employees learn new skills, which is the way which we call as upskilling. And in some cases, it's just purely redeployment, which is, okay, you have this skill set, but I don't need this skill set for this specific role. But this skill set can be used in a different, role altogether, or an opportunity together within the organization. So you will be moving into a new team. I think for all these things, employees need to be prepared mentally, and also demonstrate learning agility to be able to learn and unlearn things. So I think that's where, I would say my thought process is going.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I think about my own business here. I've been with ELB Learning for 12 or 13 years. We've been acquiring businesses lately, and that does come along with redundancies in some cases, although we're pretty proud of being able to hang on to a lot of our staff. But when I think about what we have to tighten the belt, we all maybe are experiencing it, maybe on this call, even in my own internal teams. I've had to have my team become more skilled at using Canva.
Yeah.
Because I need graphics support for what I do. I support the learning solutions team. So oftentimes we're showcasing different solutions to clients, and we have to make it look nice and polished. So if I don't have the graphic artist I need my team to become good at things like that. Fortunately, there's a lot out there that can help us to reskill and upskill. But I do think we have to be intentional about it. If I just if I lose people on my team, let's just say my team was 7 and now it's 5. Well, we still have the same goals, probably. We have to do more with less now. So now maybe I have to start looking at some of the AI tools that are out there to help me be more efficient. I bet you're running into that a lot with your coaching and some of the work you're doing out there in the space.
Absolutely. And this is why, Rich, wearing that learning hat is so important for employees today, and us as individuals too. Take a classic case, how marketing was being done, maybe 10 years back or 5 years back. With now so much focus on digital marketing, a lot of organizations are focusing on upskilling their people to understand some of the tools that you just talked about, like how do I look at, using Canva, or how do I use digital marketing tools itself to be able to penetrate and reach my audiences. And in certain cases, the technology is completely changing. When initially people started working as software development engineers, they said, okay, we need C++ as a language that we should be proficient with. But with the time, they're also using Java, they're using Python, and that's all about continuing to upskill yourself and learn and unlearn new things so that you remain competitive in the market today. And I think a lot of it is, not just organizations taking lead onto it, but what are you doing as individuals, as employees, to be able to own your own growth as well and learn new things. Right?
Yeah, it's important to think about these types of levers that McKinsey suggests. We won't read the whole report to you here, but we did grab some pieces of it, some sections we feel like that were important. This particular article, and we can provide the article for you if you haven't seen it yet. In fact, we should probably try to find that, Jake, and put it out there for everyone. But you could probably just Google McKinsey research on redeployment, upskilling, and reskilling, and you'll find it. But these comments around redeployment, reskilling, upskilling, the report specifically deals with each one of these. And you can see, you can read them right here, but could you share some examples of these in the real world, out in the wild there?
Some of it we already talked about, but let me start with redeployment. Take a classic case, customer services. You've done an IVR automation. You may not need so many call center agents or customer services agent to support the clients. That's when you start looking at what are the transferable skill sets that they have and redeploy them into a different team. They could be from voice agents becoming non-voice agents, wherein they are responding to the clients through email or through chat messaging, or we just move into some of the other roles wherein their skill set fits better. Reskilling. Imagine you are in a manufacturing setup and there is a new automation machinery that has come within the organization. Then you need to essentially reskill yourself. And I'm taking my Amazon example here. When we our leaders were working in fulfillment centers or last mile delivery stations, we had a lot of our picking, packing, and dispatching was essentially manually done. Somebody as a human would pick, pack the products and dispatch it. And then we started using conveyor belts. We had started using robotics in terms of how do we pick the product and place it to a specific location. That needed some amount of reskilling for our leaders to understand how can they use the conveyor belts, how can they use the robotics, which are tools which are available to them to be able to serve the customers better. So that was all example of reskilling. And upskilling, the classic case that I talked about, marketing, moving from traditional marketing to digital marketing needs you to understand, what are the levers in digital marketing, what are the different tools that you need to work on. And that's all about upskilling the talent, go train them on Canva or let them understand how the digital marketing, affiliate marketing strategies work. What does it mean for them to find new partners? So all these are examples of upskilling the talent as such.
That's a great example. I think about marketing, and even in our own marketing team discussions internally here at ELB Learning, if we look at AI as a tool, or it's something that's disrupting the industry, and it may it may have an impact on the number of people you need, or the content writers or tech writers. And an upskilling example might be, if my team, let's say our team here at ELB, I'll just use this as an example. If we've been in the business of communicating features of a particular solution, and that's all the marketing is based around the cool features of this thing. And well, now that AI can handle a lot of that, we may need to shift our team into thinking about benefits. Exactly. So rather than the features of an item, maybe now we're focused on the benefits of an item and how it can specifically apply to customers. And that means we might have to upskill in how to conduct focus groups and how to reach out to customers. And that's maybe not something we've done before,
Absolutely. The classic example is ChatGPT. There's so much of, buzz around it. And, what it can do for you. And some of the traditional roles may evolve just because of chat GPT, roles of resume writers, cover note writers, in HR, or people who are doing traditional HR business partnering work. That will definitely evolve further in terms of what can you do differently from what chat GPT can already do for you at a click of the button. And that is where most organizations will have to spend time in terms of reskilling and upskilling their talent, or redeploying if the skill set is something that's not needed in their existing roles.
Yeah, it's not that everything's going to go away. And
Yeah.
again, we're seeing a lot of this scary stuff out there right now. And those of us who have been around a long time, we've been here before. I remember back in 2008, we were seeing a lot of this with the mortgage crisis and the crash that was happening all around us. And now here we are 15 years later, experiencing something similar again. And we survived before, we'll survive again. Easier said than done for those who are actually being impacted by these layoffs. And I'm sure all of us on the meeting today know somebody who's personally been impacted by these layoffs. Maybe some of you who are on the call today. So we're going to dive deeper now into how do you make this happen in your organization? If you've been in the business of just, training new hires, or somebody comes into a new job, they're coming into a new leader role, well, you're not reskilling them, you're giving them the skills and knowledge they need to be successful in that role. We're talking about, like Shweta said, about the difference between a redeployment. You're taking existing people and moving them potentially, or you're combining jobs, maybe where that used to be a 2-person job, now it's a 1-person job,
yeah,
or a 2-team job, now it's a 1-team job. And if we're not thinking intentionally about how we're redeploying and reskilling and upskilling, then we are likely missing the boat as learning professionals to provide the best experience. So we've broken the report down by these 4 categories. Actually, the report itself does a pretty good job. And I love how they define this ever-evolving business landscape. If you're skeptical about the changes that are coming, I suggest, there's so many books out there now. I've been reading quite a bit on these topics. Here's one. Neil deGrasse Tyson recently wrote a book called Starry Messenger, Cosmic Perspectives on the Future. And he does a good job of saying, look at the last 30 years. And that we're talking about, today's 2023, go back to 1993 and look at what's happened. Then go from 93 to 63. And then he breaks it down by 10-year increments. So this concept of ever evolving, it's going to start evolving even faster, right, Shweta? We're reaching a point of critical mass, it seems.
Absolutely. And, I think this is the ever-evolving process. I remember when HR technology tools came into place as an HR leader, there was so much of buzz around, will the jobs become redundant? What will happen to the roles? Automation will take away jobs. But the fact is that the role actually evolves after the automation actually happens. And I know, I think Deborah has mentioned in the chat here as well, who monitors the quality of work for AI tools that we have? And, does that become a new role to be able to look at some of the AI work and see how we can draw meaning out of it? And I think if organizations will continue to evolve in that manner, the technology is an enabler for us to do something more meaningful and being able to contribute to the society back, rather than being a disabler. And that's something that I continue to believe that organizations are focusing on. And that's why the latest trends that you will see focuses on hiring for skills versus hiring for degrees and experiences that you have. Because organizations today understand that skills and ever-evolving transferable skills is what they need for today's world, where it is volatile, it is uncertain, and it needs to have competitive edge. So a lot of organizations today focus and change their attraction strategy, for that matter, to say, I will go for skills versus degrees and experiences, because I need skills for tomorrow and people who bring those transferable skills to the organization.
Yeah, that's a great way to put that. We're going to dive into these questions now. we're actually going to start. They say here, as you'll notice, I'm going to go back. They provided 10 timeless essential questions across 4 categories, and these are the 4 categories. So for the rest of this session, we would love it if you would chat in your answers to these questions. We're going to have Shweta share some of her insights on these as we move along, but we'd like to hear what you're thinking as well inside your own organizations. So within the concept of attraction, 2 questions that McKinsey suggests we should look at and answer. Are we hiring critical talent ahead of demand or to just fill vacancies? And then how do we balance internal and external sourcing? That first one, Shweta, as you're doing coaching with executive leaders, is I would imagine this is something they think about. In my experience, mostly we're just filling vacancies. But it would be nice to be in a position to think, this is coming, or we're shifting something here. We need this type of a person in this role. But what are your thoughts on that first question?
Absolutely. You nailed it, Rich, when you said most organizations today look at filling vacancies for, the open roles that they have today. So they're looking at what do I need for now? But the key differentiator between a successful organization and a futuristic organization and an innovative organization versus a traditional organization is when they start looking at their talent needs much in advance. And that's why today organizations have started to pivot towards building 5-year annual operating plans, 3-year annual operating plans, because they want to build the long-term vision for the organization. And that's where the HR leaders come in to say, this is how I can tie up my people strategy to the business strategy. So you have to look at critical demand ahead, which is going to come into the organization because of the changes that we are looking at. If you're looking at to target a very different customer base, or if you were targeting small and medium enterprises, and now you're looking at, attracting or having large enterprise accounts as your customers, you need to think about your talent very differently. So it's important for organizations to start looking at their talent acquisition, attraction strategy much in advance, because there is war for critical talent, right? And if you are pivoting in a direction which is a different direction from what you've traditionally done, then you need to start thinking about talent as soon as you start thinking about your new business strategy.
Yeah, I agree. We evolved as we were moving from, just thinking again of my own business, we had moved from being a mostly products oriented business into being a custom services business. And then as we've been in the acquisition game for the last few years, we've had to think critically about customer success, because now we have thousands of subscribers to tools. We didn't really have the infrastructure to handle that very well.
Yeah.
And we took some hits because of that. So thinking critically ahead of demand, I saw a note in the chat about being proactive versus reactive. Well, that's a nice thing to think about. If you've got, so it's nice to work on the system and not constantly in it. When you're so buried in it all the time, you can't sort of get above the forest to look down. Jake, are we seeing some other insights on this?
Yes, I was going to say that seems to be the thing. Everyone would love to be proactive, but is reactive based on certain conditions and things of this nature. Deborah just added something else here. To balance internal and external sourcing, you have to be really clear on expectations and set realistic expectations for external sources. Used effectively, it can be a great combo. Using external sources for area that you don't already have internal can be helpful. Thank you, Deborah.
Yeah, thank you.
Let me add here, this debate of build versus buy, has been going on for decades now. I've spent 25 years in HR, and this question continues to come in. Do we build, which means do we look at internal talent and enhance their capabilities, or do we buy, which means we get external talent, from outside? And my view on this is there is no right or wrong way to do it. You have to understand where your business priorities are and what you are focusing on. If you're not looking at expansion, hyper growth, or change in strategy, you will continue to leverage your internal resources and upskill them. But if you're going in a very different direction, yes, you can upskill and reskill your talent. But at the same point of time, you also need industry experts who can bring an outside in perspective and help you scale the growth that the organization is looking at. And that's where you'll also look at buying the talent. But then buying the talent just isn't enough. You have to continue to ensure that they upskill the people who are within the organization so that we can continue to scale the organization further. So it has to be a combo of both.
Mm-hmm. Shweta, you recently had a role as global HR, talent acquisition, and diversity programs leader at Meta.
Yeah.
When you were in that role, did you find that you were bringing in a lot of external talent, and you were outsourcing talent, or were you mostly focused on all internal, or was there a balance?
Yeah. As we were in the hyper growth mode, especially on the reality lab side, wherein we were building Oculus and some of the cutting edge products, definitely we needed to buy some talent, which means bring in some external talent who understood the technical aspects, had the technical edge. But at the same point of time, we also had a lot of internal talent which had done some great work, and they understood, the nitty-gritties of working at a complex organization like Meta. So we definitely upskilled, reskilled, and redeployed some of our talent. We are continuing to do that as well, and we also bought some talent externally. So I think it depends upon where the organization is essentially pivoting. We did both.
Mm-hmm.
I'll say we did buy a lot of talent, but we equally upskilled and reskilled a lot of talent as well.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I would think for any of us in the call today, as you're thinking about your own teams, and maybe you're seeing some layoffs, you're seeing some shifting of personnel around in the organization. So this may be top of mind for you. That's probably why you're here. Talking about reskilling and upskilling and redeploying, but to fill gaps as needed, it's a no-brainer. You don't have to be a Meta, which I have tons of money, but obviously they're not without their own challenges with layoffs and whatnot. But or in Amazon, I know you were at Amazon for a while too, Shweta. But it's not a hard talk off or rationale to somebody that's got to make a decision about, well, we've got all this work to do. We have maybe a new rollout coming, a new product is entering the market. Who knows? You can bring in talent. And whereas there may not be budget for $100,000 salary for a new role, maybe there is budget for $30,000 to bring in somebody for 3 months. And really get a real lift. And you'd be amazed. I've been amazed. We just acquired a staff augmentation company last year. And so the talent that is joining that pool, because we always look at two abilities, by the way, and I'm sure we all do, capability and availability.
Yeah.
And there's so many capable people who are available now, and you can go get them for 3 months or 4 months. And it's the gig economy. I guess I'll throw that out there, even though it's probably a little bit too generic, but I've been there. I mean, for about 8 or 9 years before joining ELB. In fact, I joined ELB on a 3-year contract to grow a division. So that's happening. And if you haven't looked at it, it might be worth a look when we talk about external sourcing. So,
absolutely.
Yeah, great thoughts. All right, let's move on. Jake, I'll trust you to jump in here if we've got other insights I'm missing in the chat. Let's talk about development. So 2 questions here. Again, McKinsey had 10 questions across these 4 categories. And so we'll just continue along here. Do we predefine career paths, or do we let our people master their own destiny? And then what are the triggers and prerequisites of a promotion? That first one, with your experience at Meta and Amazon and your coaching you've done and all the work you're doing out there with women in the workplace, and this concept, Shweta, around predefining a path. If I were to join a company in a specific role and they had a career path development defined for me using a degreed platform or some other LXP, that's interesting to me. Although as a 53-year-old guy who's been working for 30 years, 35 years, maybe I don't want that because I'm like, oh, I've done that. I don't need that one. I don't need that one. I'd rather master my own destiny and determine what I need on my own. I mean, what are your thoughts about that?
Well, Today, the generation is very different. I remember, my career when I started at Airtel. One of the key projects that HR team had was to build career paths. What do you need to do to be becoming a CS head or a COO or sales head? And we would define, you'll do these two roles, you'll go to these two geographies, then only you'll get promoted there. Today, it's very, very different. I think people like to take charge of their career. People do a lot of external gigs as well, along with their full-time job to upskill themselves and want to move into a very, very different direction altogether. So I think the organizations today are trying to balance. How do I take, the personal ambitions of people and provide them opportunity through their internal mobility policy or through their policies of internal job postings to encourage them to find their next passion, right? And as we said, it's all about skills today. So it's not just about, the previous experiences that you had, or did you had a degree in that, domain or not. But if you demonstrate those skills or you're ready to learn, you have strong learning agility, people are ready to take bold bet on you. And that's exactly what the Generation Z today prefers as well. They may be doing some ABC today, but maybe pivoting towards completely something different, XYZ tomorrow, because they have either upskilled themselves or they've reskilled themselves, or they're just passionate about that area and have self-learned about it, right? So I think the organizations can provide opportunities to say, hey, if you are in this role, these are the possible 3 roles that you can do within the company. But you will be surprised how much people take today charge of their own destiny and careers. And one of the best practices that I saw was at Amazon. A lot of organizations today say spend 1 year in your existing role, 2 years in your existing roles before you can apply for any internal opportunities. And Amazon actually said there is no internal movement policy. You join the company today, you spend the time, and if you don't like the role or you think your skill set is not getting utilized the way it should get utilized, or or you have different passion areas, go ahead and interview for a different role within the organization, and we won't stop you from that. If you clear the loop, if you clear the interview, the role is yours. And you will be surprised how many people did something completely different from where they started.
That's that number 2, triggers and prerequisites of a promotion. I love that, because again, we're all coming to a role with years of experience and education and skills and knowledge. So opening that up is interesting.
And that's what we believe at EVOW too. Own your growth, right? Growth is in your hands. You just need to find which direction you need to go. Do you need guidance? Yes, the guidance will be there, but ultimately it's about you owning your destiny and your growth.
Yeah, absolutely. We think about an LMS, for example. Probably all of us on the call today have a learning management system or an LXP or something where our training and all of our content is loaded, and we may have it identified by role.
Yeah.
And what about maybe that number 1 there? What about opening it up? I know that for our platform, the Rockstar Learning platform that ELB Learning provides to the world, we have what's called learner groups. And so if you're in this targeted learning group, you can only see the content for your group. So what about opening that up to folks can maybe at least go provide a catalog of everything that's out there and let people choose where they want to go. Maybe you're already doing that, but that is interesting. You let folks master their own destiny and determine where they want to go. As you're doing coaching out there in the world, Shweta, are you finding that it is almost an expectation for people nowadays to want to have the opportunity to grow in the direction they want to go? Meaning, if they're coming into the organization, they don't want to be locked into a particular role. They want the opportunity to expand. Is that a younger generation thing, or is it just a people thing? Is it part of the new normal? Any comments on that?
I think it is part of the new normal, I would say. It's not about the generation. You will be surprised how many people who have 20, 30 years of experience are pivoting into something completely different. Look at the number of startups that are coming in today. Look at the kind of innovative ideas people are working on today. And that's purely because they've got the exposure to, understand and reflect on their skills and abilities to say, where can I utilize these skills to move into a different direction altogether? I was talking to somebody yesterday, with someone who actually started his career in consulting, business consulting, and then moved in finance, and now is doing HR and talent acquisition. So, there is no limit. If you have the relevant skill set, the opportunities are available for you. And I see, some people, I think Deborah has mentioned in the chat that some people need, some guidance. And that guidance is definitely available. But at the same point of time, the organizations today say, what are you passionate about? How can we help you find your passion? And then, go find the role within the organization which can help you align with your passions. So I think organizations today are very, very open to exploring if you are ready to take charge of your career. But I think that you'll definitely have HR and learning teams and your business leaders offering you guidance to say, hey, by the way, you have these transferable skills which you can leverage. So use both of them.
Yeah. Fascinating insights. Thank you. Okay, 2 more categories, guys. We're going to move on to performance now. How do we spotlight performance and underperformance? How do we reward good performance? So thoughts on this, Shweta, just off the top of your head.
I think rewarding good performance or, identifying underperformers is something which, again, has been going on traditionally in a lot of organizations. But today, the organizations not just focus on what people have achieved in terms of, and, call it as a good performance. They also look at how part of it, which is essentially, it's not just critical about you delivering results, but how do you reach or achieve those goals is equally important. And, that's why when organizations today look at, good performance for them, it's also about the behaviors that you demonstrate. You may be a killer sales person and somebody who's a rock star and all those terms that we used to use to say this is high performance for us. Today it is not just about what you're achieving, it is also about, as a salesperson, are you also able to build relationships within the company and outside the company? And that's where your competencies, your behaviors are so much of focus area that most organizations today have revisited their performance reviews to say, we'll just not focus on key KPIs, but we'll also focus on behaviors and competencies that you bring.
Behaviors. So that's interesting. Jake?
I'd like to point out Deborah. Thank you, Deborah, also for chiming in so much. I really appreciate it. She has said that our company has implemented a peer-to-peer platform for coworkers to call out great experiences with other coworkers. Very cool.
That is cool. We do some of that internally at ELB too.
And we did that something at Meta too, So
yeah.
Yes, peer feedback or creating a platform where you can acknowledge each other has become such a big part of the culture of the organization, which celebrates success. But at the same point of time, celebrating failures is equally important. So that's important as well. Specifically when you're looking at performance, good performance for leadership roles or managerial roles, do your leaders create psychologically safe environment for people to be able to bring their authentic self to work, fail, learn, relearn. That's also a very important aspect when you start looking at performance for management roles.
Yeah, that's a good point. I read an article once that Google had, I don't know, maybe Shweta, but a lab, let's just say, and it was a forward-thinking lab where there was a lot of failure and they had expectation for failure. And maybe
Absolutely.
They still do. We don't do that a lot, do we, guys? Where we have a Slack channel internally at our company that has singing praises, and if you see that light up, in your feed, you go check it out, see who's getting some accolades or recognition. But what I've never seen there is somebody saying, we tried something and it failed colossally, but I want to recognize so-and-so for being brave enough to bring this idea to the team and giving it a try. Because if we don't know, and I've always been a fan of fail fast, fail early.
Exactly.
And then because you can move on. And you said the word, a culture of safety and respect. If you have that, then you're getting your best foot forward. You're getting the best out of your people because they're not afraid to fail. They will try something new and interesting and engaging. Who knows? That's how we progress, right? And get better.
Absolutely.
So that's a very good point. This concept around behaviors. There are KPIs, certainly, but you said something about behaviors and recognizing specific behaviors, because KPIs are lag metrics. If I'm going to lose weight, when I step on the scale, that's a lag metric. I lost, did I lose weight? Did I not? But a leading metric is, am I exercising every day? Am I watching my calorie intake? So it's those kinds of leading metrics that we can say, hey, we're hoping to get to the success, but what I'm noticing from this person in terms of behavior, like they don't leave their desk until all of their tasks for the day are accomplished. And if you're a salesperson, you can go into your sales CRM and say, set myself, I'm going to move all these tasks forward, contact this person on this day, email this person on this day, send a text message on this day. So I come into a particular day and there's 27 tasks to be accomplished because they've all stacked for the day. Absolutely. Well, I've known salespeople who will not leave their desk till they've hit every single task. And maybe they're not number one in terms of, sales, but that behavior, recognizing that behavior and maybe even rewarding it. Again, you have to be intentional about it. These things don't just happen, but I really love that idea. It does create a culture of safety.
Yeah.
And then I think that would apply to relationships too, not just workplace, but everywhere. If you feel safe with your partner, family, whatever, you're willing to just do stuff and, it's more fun and engaging and interesting. So, yeah.
When you're not under that constant pressure and threat, and the environment is safe, that's when the innovation happens. That's when people can think freely and think out of box and say, this is what I want to do differently. I think that culture in the organization to allow people to challenge the status quo and look at things differently is very important. And that's where your performance management process plays an important role in acknowledging those behaviors.
Yeah, that's a great point. There's this, we're just scratching the surface of a lot of this. I'm realizing, Shweta, there's so
we
much.
We have to do multiple such webinars, right?
Well, with your background and history, leading global teams and HR and all of that, I bet you've had to go deep on a lot of these.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, we don't have the time to get super deep. We have one more category to look at. Culture and leadership. This is one of the most interesting ones. Culture of presence. And Shweta and I had to talk about this during our pre-meetings. What do we mean by culture of presence? And she helped me realize that really that's about, in this new remote working world and hybrid world, when you think about a culture of presence, like yesterday, our CEO here I'm in Utah, which is where ELB Learning is based, but I know Jake is in New York, and our marketing team, we have folks in Michigan and Florida, and we have a big team in India. But the team the company was founded in Utah. I live in Utah, so he wanted to do a lunch. We all came together yesterday. There's about 25 of us. We had lunch together at the office. We got to talk and then integrate and just engage. But it had been a while. But that sort of intentional activity where our CEO says, let's do a lunch and come together for no other reason, just to come together. And we're all so remote now. And then the top down versus bottom up. That's interesting too. Would you share your thoughts on both of these, Shweta?
Absolutely. I think cultural presence for me is, how do you take this distributed workforce that we have today together? There are some people, as Rich, you said, in office. Some of them are working hybrid. Some of them are completely remote. And I think as leaders and as HR professionals, the challenge for us is, how do we cater to such a distributed workforce and ensure that each one of them is engaged? And that's why we play the role of, the coaches for our business leaders to say, how do you manage your distributed workforce? You may not have the opportunity to meet everybody face to face. Then how do you leverage technology to be able to create experiences or those shared experiences within your team members who are working hybrid and remote? Simple things like If you are on a Zoom call, are you paying attention to the body language of some of your team members? Are they involved in the conversation? Are you giving them the opportunity to express their views? Because some people are much quieter. Some are like me, they can talk for hours, right? So how do you go about stopping and saying, I heard you, Shweta, but I also want to say what Rich has to say, so that, there's inclusion, there's belonging in the system. And then, how can you have fun even when you are virtual? All those things are very important when you start thinking about culture of the organization. And in terms of bottoms up approach versus top down approach, and this is where we were talking about, I think it's important for organizations to look at what they want to achieve or their business strategy, not only from what the leadership team is thinking, but also from what the employees on the ground are experiencing and getting feedback from their customers. And that's where the bottoms up approach comes in, that when you're defining your organization business strategy, or you're looking at revamping the culture of the organization, you just don't talk to the leaders, but also talk to people who are at the grassroots level, who are talking to the customers, who are understanding what challenges the organization is facing in the market, and bring those insights back to you. And truly successful organizations create those opportunities for people to share their experiences and feedback about products and services. And that really differentiates. As a leader, I may have a brilliant idea, but if I'm not listening to what my employees and my customers are telling me, that is a sure shot path to failure, and that's where this bottoms up approach is so important.
Yeah, I've seen organizations do that very well. And I had to ask Shweta, what do we mean by bottom up approach? But it's exactly that. If the C-level, the executive team, has an expectation that in the weekly meetings or the daily stand-ups or the board meetings or whatever, that there are these customer-facing moments that we're talking about, that's a very bottom-up approach, which means VPs and directors and managers have to be funneling that up. The C-level doesn't often have time to come to the customer-facing, meetings. And as we've grown and gotten bigger here at ELB Learning, we've seen that, where we don't get to see our executive team as much as possible. But sometimes we do get executives who are involved with that. But all the way down, if the executive has a culture of leadership where that expectation is there, then we do. I personally have experienced a dynamic where you feel like your input and your engagement is important, and it is. You're in a role, no matter where I am in the organization. I'm here for a reason. There's a role for me that likely will go right down to the customer at some level. And so what does that experience feel like? And then that culture of presence, awesome feedback on that. If you're not thinking, I love how McKinsey put it, what culture of presence do you want to achieve? Are you face-to-face? If you are already face-to-face, then are you doing things where you're getting out of the day-to-day? Are you team building? Or are we looking for ways to integrate and talk and engage in ways other than work? All of that is so important. All right, we're right up against the end of our time here. We wanted to let everybody know that you can reach out to either of us. Shweta is available for consulting and just jam session, brainstorming. I think, Shweta, we're lucky right now that you're not currently in a role somewhere. You're kind of on your own, I think, right now.
Yeah, I'm scaling EVAO and I'm very happy with that. Reach out to me for coaching, consulting assignments, and I'll be happy to help.
Yeah, she's definitely someone that you can reach out to. And then I'm always here as well. You can always reach out to me if you want to talk more about this topic. So, Jake, anything else that's coming from the masses that we should touch on, or are we good to start wrapping?
I think we are. There's nothing in the Q&A. I think we addressed any questions or comments throughout the webinar. So if anyone has any final questions, comments, concerns, speak now or hold your peace. And otherwise, we will be sending out a recording of this webinar along with the slides within the next couple of days. So you all will be receiving that. And I'll thank you in advance if nobody has any final questions.
Shweta, it has been really awesome to get to know you and get to meet you during all of this process. And I hope that we'll continue to partner together.
Absolutely. Look forward to it, Rich, and great session. And thank you to the participants. I loved the messages on the chat. I look forward to connecting with you on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
All right. Excellent. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everyone. Have a wonderful day. Be well.
Bye-bye.